Good morning. A very warm welcome to this discussion about digital, essential infrastructure for a green recovery. My name is Dharmendra Kanani. A warm welcome to our roundtable guests, our hand-picked, if you can call it that, from various sectors. I hope you like the video. That's our launch video for this initiative, Connected Europe. I want to welcome you, but also those of you who are watching on live stream, a very warm welcome to you. If you wish to pose a question, raise a query, or just frustration, go on to hashtag FOE debate, and then you'll be able to log your question and we'll take you hopefully throughout this 1 hour that we've got. A little bit about the debate. Today we're formally announcing our initiative, which is a partnership with Vodafone, to tackle all matters digital. It's Connected Europe basically is focused around three things: to enable a successful, a green and a resilient Europe. And from our perspective, the reason why we are working on this agenda is obviously, I think, a no-brainer insofar as the fact that when we think about the pace of digitalization of our societies and our environments and our communities, one thing for sure that we've learned, especially in these unfortunate past 9 or 10 months, is that we've all shifted online out of necessity, and we know some of the biggest winners have been tech companies. Their share prices have soared. They're the only element of the private sector that has done so. However, when we were thinking about doing something significant on this agenda, we discussed with Vodafone also about how can we work with an organization, a company that is part of the infrastructure of digital, but a company that is thinking ahead, future-focused, and that we could work with to enable the right levers to be pressed or drawn in order to create a more sustainable, inclusive and forward-looking Europe, using digital as the infrastructure and the enabler for so much that we want to achieve. As we all know, those of you who are our guests on this round table know more than anyone that digital is a force for good as well as a force for bad. And what we know recently, and I want to quote from La Dama, the Ursula von der Leyen, who announced on the 3rd that we're rewriting the rule book for our digital market. And everything in terms of rules from online content, from selling unsafe products to spreading hate speech. She described herself as a tech optimist. We also know that on the 4th, we have an action plan released by the Commission, which specifically tackles the media and communication sector of digital, and so on and so forth. We've seen other rafts of either regulations in gestation or those that have been announced, which will kick in as of next year. We're on the eve of something quite interesting and important. Actually, we keep on having this conversation about the future of Europe, but we keep on having this conversation about the budget. The thing that in response to the virus crisis and the economic crisis as a result has been the biggest use of public taxpayers' money to play on the financial markets, create new own resources for the Commission in order to sway opinion amongst member states to come together and work differently, and to promise them that actually their GDP contribution will either stay the same or fall in the next 5 to 7 years, but actually they will have money to restructure their economies and their other structures in terms of education, health, and so on. But also, a very clear scene setter here is a Green Deal. And what we know is that in the next 2 days, in this week, there's going to be a big bun fight about whether that budget can be approved and whether Hungary and Poland will play the game or not, or play by the rules or not. And we'll face that very familiar standoff and stalemate that we do about rule of law, values, kind of Europe we want to be, and money. It is ever thus. But let's hope that the universe is clement and with the stars align and people will behave, and especially the male leaders will see that actually it's going to be better for themselves and their communities if they play ball. Enough from me. I want to first start off by welcoming our two scene setters. We are partners in this endeavour of Connected Europe, and that's Ben and Dorothée. Ben, very warm welcome to you. Ben, you're Chief Economist at the Vodafone Group. And what I wanted to ask you is that Why now? Why this? And what is it you're hoping to achieve as a company as a result of, forget the partnership with us, but actually the more important thing is the outcomes we are hoping to achieve. Ben, over to you.
Thank you, Dimendra, and thank you for hosting this event. And we're really looking forward to this partnership. It's a really big initiative for us, one which we're very excited about. In order to answer your question, why are we doing this, I think there's a little bit of a journey that we as a company have been on. And in a very short period of time, I'll take you through that journey. I guess it starts a couple of years ago, and really is when we realized that there was a problem. As a company, but also as a sector, we'd fallen out of favor with investors. Our reputation had gone to a very low position. We were on a par with tobacco companies, alcohol companies, and the banking sector, and simply weren't meeting the expectations of society. We had some issues that we hadn't dealt with effectively, roaming being a prime example. So having established that there was a problem that we needed to solve, within our external affairs leadership team, we sat down to try to devise a solution. And in the end, the solution we came up with was what it became known as our social contract. And it's recognizing that we had to be more in tune with what society wanted from us and how we could deliver for society, but also what we wanted in return. And we built this around three pillars, around the pillar of trust, fairness, and leadership. The individual details aren't important, but at the heart of this was a vision of having a much more digital Europe, but also recognizing that we had to make the first move in order to make this happen by getting our own house in order, but then bringing others along with us on that journey, and others being policymakers, but more generally society as a whole. So having devised a social contract, we started to sell it internally within Vodafone, and we really got a lot of energy behind this. There's a lot of excitement about resetting this relationship with society, and we started to come up with programs and plans to implement. We had KPIs, we had spreadsheets, the whole thing that you'd expect from a large corporate. And then, as I rapidly go through the history of this, 9 months or so ago, COVID hits and the whole world changes, and everything that we intended to do, almost gets thrown in the dustbin, and you have to start again from scratch. But the great thing was that as a company, we had what we'd like to call this social contract mindset. And so as soon as the crisis hit, we very rapidly moved into a mode of, okay, what do we need to do to ensure that we are there supporting society? We knew our networks were underpinning the economies of societies, keeping things moving as best as we could. We came up with a 5-point plan, which was built around our infrastructure, making sure it stayed reliable and secure, to protect the vulnerable people. We wanted to digitalize businesses as quickly as we could, give support to governments in their own digitalization, and also give insights to governments to help with an exit strategy. And so very quickly, we improved our reputation, and we were able to position ourselves as a company and also as a sector more broadly that had the interests of society at heart. And then from this crisis, we now emerged the twin transitions, the vision for the future, the digital transition, the green transition. And you could say, is it job done now? You've got to, hopefully when they get agreed, the recovery and resilience facilities, a huge amount of public money to make these transitions happen. And the answer is whether the job is done is an unequivocal no, it's not done yet. And the reason it's not done is because there's still a lot of shaping to be done to ensure these transitions happen in the way that we think will meet society's needs. And there's 4 areas where we think there's a lot of work still to be done on these transitions. So firstly is the divides. We've seen with the importance of digital in the last months that those that have come out okay, but those that haven't come out okay. And there's the 3 divides: the people, the 42% of Europeans who don't have basic digital skills. It's the businesses, the 82% of SMEs that don't sell online. And it's the rural communities, still subject to an annual investment gap of 40 billion euros to fully complete connectivity in those areas. Those divides are a problem for us, and those we need to work with policymakers and with society to close them. And secondly, we see there's a big opportunity to create a more successful Europe. One of the key themes of this relationship. This is the chance to have European projects of scale, to increase European autonomy, to make proper use of European data. And this has to be a real focus of the transitions. And then thirdly, we also see that there's an opportunity now to remove some of the inequalities in terms of economic performance. We have a ratio of 12 to 1 between GDP per capita of the richer state and the poorest member state. This is a gap that needs to be closed. And we believe that having an equalization of digital performance, and we would measure this through the DESI, the European Commission's index, by getting everyone up to a score of 90 on the DESI, we could remove some of these economic inequalities, which make the budget discussion so fraught. And to be honest, that's absolutely the spirit of today, is the ongoing budget discussions between those that have and those that do not have. And then finally, that just it's an obvious point, but there's none of this will be worthwhile doing if we kill the planet in the process. And that's why bringing the green transition in with the digital transition is so important. We have to make these two go hand in hand in order to have the economies, the societies, but the world that the next generation really want to have to live in. And then that comes back to the partnership. So why do we have this partnership? Because these challenges are so great. And as we recognized a couple of years ago when we were devising the social contract, we can't deliver this by ourselves. We need to do this with citizens, with businesses, with policymakers. There needs to be a fruitful exchange of ideas and to come up with the longer term solutions which everyone is signed up to and everyone can live with.
Ben, thank you so much. And, you know, it goes back to the launch video. That was our launch video, by the way, if you hadn't noticed. That's what we're going to be promoting this initiative through. And I love the fact that you call this yourselves, and I want to quote, a social contract mindset company. I like that. And I shouldn't be so invidious by saying that I like it, but it means a lot for a corporate sector to talk in those terms. And I think that those of us will want to unpick with you, but also I think making sure that the words are lived within the company and its actions are going to be as key as the partnerships and the arrangements you put into place with others. So it can be shown that you can learn by doing, but also lead by doing in this space. And I want to encourage all of you to tweet also to make sure that if you haven't got it, it's #ConnectedEurope in terms of comments and queries, and just to raise a noise, because this is, I suppose, our curtain raiser on this initiative. And the reason why we have picked such a small number of you to be with us on this round table is that we want to understand what needs to happen, where we need to focus, and the kinds of traction we need to achieve in this next 24 months or so if we're to move Connected Europe forward with the holy grail of billions and millions of pounds coming through into the member states in the next year or so, if all goes well this next week. Obviously, there may be further delay. But we know part of that is making sure that member states, in their plans, first they have to agree to the national parliaments, don't forget, and then in their national plans, that they set out clearly the recovery and transformation that's agreed. And one thing I think that's what you refer to in terms of, you know, the issue about green and digital. I think that we can't become the kind of green force that we want to be if we don't have digital inside and around it, because there's a kind of a self-evidence here that actually that digital can be the power of creating a greener approach, but also a green transformation because of all its capability. However, it needs, as we know, a form of regulation, and we see around us a number of things that are happening. But before I move on to those, Dorothée, can I invite you to comment? You're a recent joiner of Vodafone. You're head of sustainability, if I've got that right, sustainable business at Vodafone. Tell us, if you don't mind me asking you this question, why did you join Vodafone, given your track record of what you've done? That's not a negative, so I want to liven things up as well. Come on, be honest. Why Vodafone? Why now? What are you hoping to achieve as someone who's come from the outside in, and what kind of aspirations do you have to change the company or be a part of the change in the company?
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dharmendra. It's really great to be here. Now, I'm an impatient optimist, and by the end of this decade, I also have a teenage daughter who, together with all her friends and together with all the young people, will hold you and me and all of us to account for the actions that we take to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals and to put the world on the path to net zero. And honestly, I don't want her and her friends and all the other young people to have to miss school to strike because all of us collectively have not delivered. So if we want to have half a chance to limit climate change catastrophe and win the race to zero, and if we want to make sure that we build a society that really leaves no one behind and is more just and fair, we need digital. We need to level up the access. We need to improve digital skills. We need to make sure the recovery includes everyone. And we need connectivity to help decarbonize society and use natural resources more efficiently. So whilst telcos may not yet be the most sexy brands out there, they provide really essential societal infrastructure, and obviously that has become even clearer with the crisis in the past months, and when our networks are keeping families and businesses connected and economies on their feet. And especially at Vodafone, I think I see potential for impact because of the reach that comes in three ways. So first of all, the geographical footprint. So our presence in Europe and Africa, we operate mobile and fixed networks in 21 countries, and we partner with another 48 more. So that's a huge, huge reach. Secondly, through our products and services, if you think of it, we can really reach real people out there. We have over 300 million mobile customers, more than 27 million fixed broadband. We have over 100 million IoT connections out there. So that is a huge reach, and that provides a platform for impact. And then thirdly, I think it's through our leverage. So our leverage both in the supply chain, and you have to know that we spend on an annual basis 24 billion of spend on suppliers. So that's an absolute massive amount, and a huge, really a lever to move things in the right direction. But on the other side, our corporate customers, so thousands of companies, SMEs, big companies, small companies that we work with, that we can partner with, that we can drive solutions with, that we can help decarbonize. So, for me, this digital technology is really at the heart of driving the scale and the speed of delivering the SDGs, of delivering the Green Deal, of delivering the race to zero. And so I'm really, really excited to be part of that.
So what's your own green footprint then in the company? You mentioned some of that. You've set a very ambitious target that by July 2021, that all of your supply, you'll be green. If I know, 100% renewable electricity, no later than July 2021. You've dubbed something called the Green Gigabyte Net for customers across your 11 markets, and so on and so forth. Tell us a little bit about this story. It sounds too good to be true.
Well, it isn't, and that's the good thing. So, as you know, as part of the Green Deal, the EU has rightly identified the need to reduce the carbon emissions of the ICT sector itself, which is a key to then supporting the green transition. And we are on that path. So the commitment that you mentioned is our commitment to source 100% of our electricity from renewable sources by July 2021 for a whole European footprint, and by 2025 for a whole global footprint. Because obviously, when you think of the African markets that we operate in, some of those have additional challenges to source 100% renewable electricity. But what's more, just let me frame that. So if you think of the footprint of our operations, so our scope 1 and 2, about 90% of that is the electricity that we use in our base stations, in our technology centers, etc. And obviously, so 90%. So if we tackle that, if we eliminate that, that's more or less our whole operational footprint reduced. And we still have, some diesel generators in remote areas, small fleet, etc. But so if you think of that, so the thing we focus on most is energy efficiency. After all, the best kilowatt hour is the one that you don't use. And that is actually, it is so crucial in the way we do things. If you think that energy you spend is 10% of our OPEX, we have a really good incentive to do that also from a business point of view. And we've actually managed through our focus on energy efficiency, which we also use the proceeds from a green bond for, to keep our energy consumption almost flat whilst delivering a more than 1,000% increase in network traffic. So that means that the energy consumption per unit of data traffic has reduced by 90%. And that's phenomenal, right? Because obviously you see the exponential growth in data, but if you can keep the energy and the electricity use flat, that is really half of the way there. And then the electricity that we do use, we source it from renewable sources. So either on-site generation or PPAs or qualified RECs, et cetera, So that's how we're getting there. And that commitment is part of now a broader commitment where we have set a science-based target to eliminate the full footprint of our operations by 2030. And then our complete footprint, so also including the scope 3 that is outside of our control, but in our sphere of influence by 2040. So net zero by 2040.
Thank you. Let's come back to you in a moment. I want to invite some of our guests into this conversation, if I may. And just to kind of forewarn you, and without very little notice, actually, I want to look at divides and investment. And in the first, I want to talk about the point that Ben has made, particularly, but yourself, in that what this can do is either level up, enhance, and equalize inequality of opportunity and the divides that we are witnessing that have been intensified, deepened, and broadened as a result of the crisis, or it can transform them. And so, Lindsey, I'm not giving you any warning whatsoever, but I'd like you to comment on this, actually, because you're someone who's done something kind of powerful because you saw what could happen with the web, and someone who's, you've had a bit between your teeth around this. And I want to bring you in early in this conversation because we always tag inequality and divides at the end, but I think it's important to bring you in now. Please do introduce yourself for the benefit of all those who are watching and on our roundtable. Over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dharmendra. And I'd just like to say, first of all, that this is so heartening, Ben and Dorothée, to hear about this partnership between Vodafone and Friends of Europe. So who am I? I'm a social entrepreneur. I have the privilege of being a Friends of Europe European young leader. And I worked in the development field for many years in Asia and in Africa. And then I fell into tech. I founded an organization that's called W4. And our main activity is to promote girls' and women's digital inclusion and equality and also leadership. We've worked with the European Commission, and actually at the moment we're working a lot with Equals and GSMA, and of course you know GSMA, to really to work to overcome the digital gender divide globally. So when I hear this approach about this partnership, first of all, and this approach of the social contract company and everything you're saying about promoting affordable access, meaningful connectivity, really seeing how the digital transformation, the digital transition and green transition are inextricably linked. Of course, this is really heartening. I guess, the obvious question I would ask you is, can you speak to this critical issue, which is the global digital gender divide? I mean, we have the digital divide globally, and obviously Vodafone is working in Africa, where we're seeing some of the widest gaps in terms of connectivity and meaningful access to ICT infrastructure. So can you speak to this? I'm just keen to hear.
Sure, but I would also like you, as you know,
Yes.
You know what I'm like, Lindsey. Is what we've got some short period of time to tackle this, and this is not about
Right.
Ben and Dorothea being speakers in this. As you know, this
No.
is about the brain in this
No.
in this virtual
Yeah.
room. If you were to kind of say to us, as in this partnership, and we're hoping that you'll come on this, we hope that all of you will come on this journey with us as partners in making sure that Connected Europe becomes a reality. What would be good to hear, and perhaps you want to think about it and come back, is what are the one or two things that we absolutely must do if this is going to tackle, or even, it's both not only say the right things, but do the right things in terms of inequality of opportunity?
Well, I would say that Vodafone, being the powerful company it is, has a huge role to play. You talked, Dorothea, the key word, it's one of my favorite words, is accountability. And as you said, even for your own, your own children, they're going to hold us to account. So I think the kind of power and influence that, telcos have today, including Vodafone, it's not just about Vodafone, but you have this opportunity to set the example and to bring pressure to bear on governments. Now, I know that might sound like wishful thinking, but I don't think it is, especially because everything we're talking about, these are not just moral issues. These are also, there's a business case. If you talk about overcoming the digital gender divide, we all know there's a huge business opportunity there too. So I would say one thing is in a lot of the great initiatives, because there are great initiatives, Dharmendra. When we last spoke about this, I said, hey, it was great to see that the European Commission introduced the Women in Digital scorecard. Well, that's great, but we all know that this is not mandatory. As a lot of the great initiatives where we're trying to move towards more responsible business, they're not mandatory. We're in the area of soft, and I would say a company like Vodafone definitely has a key role to play and can set an example and stands to win and stands to have an edge. I don't want to say competitive, I want to say collaborative, because a lot of the ways of achieving, I think the future is collaborative. We know that, we all know that. So I would say it stands to gain a lot by leading the way. That's certainly one thing I would say, Dharmendra. And as Ben was saying, the social contract, actually we've been talking about this for a long while, about how once you start to factor into your business across the value chain, this is no longer about corporate social responsibility as an add-on, but it's really in the way you do business. There are multiple wins that could be had. Well, just off the top of my head, but Dharmendra, thank you for asking me. But I just want to say again that this is so wonderful as a European young leader, and given the work that I do, to hear about this partnership, that is great news.
Thank you, and we'll be counting on you. Don't forget, as a part of the journey. Part of the divide and inequality of opportunity, skills, and it's both the solution but also the problem in terms of digital skills divide, but also inequality of opportunity. Dionysia, can I bring you in terms of the role you play and the whole issue about digital skills being harnessed at a time of extreme crisis where kids haven't got access to school at the moment. You're only seeing the widening of all of that. You're in Greece, when I last spoke to you, you're doing some amazing things. But for the benefit of the audience, both in this room but live stream, say who you are and respond to that question for me, would you please?
Thank you very much for the invitation in this meeting as well. I'm Dionysia Avgerinopoulou, European Young Leader and the Chair of the Environment Committee of the Greek Parliament. I'm also the Director of the European Institute of Law, Science and Technology that has the mandate to, let's say so, bring into the social and political agenda the new technologies for the benefit of the mankind. And I think we are doing good work regarding digital transformation and green development on this issue. But coming back to your question about the inclusion, the digital inclusion and the kids, I would like to emphasize on one single topic that maybe we did not pay in much attention. Many governments, at least the Greek government, did not pay attention to that, and we're trying to amend the issue now. There are specific categories of kids that do not have digital education or access to internet, and one of these categories are the Roma kids. These kids, they don't live in places and in neighborhoods that they are digital savvy, and their parents, most of them, not all of them, of course, they have not provided them with a tablet or smart machine or something, and they have been left out of the digital e-schooling. So this is a big issue in Greece right now, and we're trying to work with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Digital Transformation and the Ministry of Social Inclusion in order to find some solutions. But we should work on this very cohesively and very inclusively, all of us, all Europe. Because these are not the only
Everyone says that. No, sorry to challenge you and interrupt you, but how? Because everyone says this. Because actually, that one community is writ large across Europe. When you see the poorer communities in, whether it's the Moroccan communities or Bangladeshi communities in London, elsewhere.
For example, we should cover more areas that do not have internet access up to now with broadband services, with free internet services. and we could provide them with smart machines like for free at the beginning. We're working on that right now. Of course, there are many regions that they don't have internet access because of the geographical location of the region. So we need maybe more 5G or 6G that is coming in order to cover these very difficult geographical regions. But providing to everybody affordable internet, it's a basic stuff. It's like providing them water in a way, because you need not only to live, but you need to live in a digital economy. If you are excluded out of this, then you cannot really participate in this new economy that Europe and the whole world is trying
Absolutely.
to...
I know that, yeah. I know that in surveys done in India, Africa, parts of Africa, but most of Europe, is that young people and families will now think about having access to a smartphone or internet as an essential good, as essential as food and water. It is phenomenal how our lives have been transformed by digital. Thank you for making that point. Part of that divide issue, I want to go to local. Thank you very much. Is locality. Jasna, I want to bring you in, because that thing about divides and those who are in and out of this revolution or transformation are determined at a city level. You know, you are, part of that. Cities are going to be the drivers of change in this gender over the next 10 years in particular, if not in the next 5. Can you say a little bit about your perspective about locality in this context and what we should be thinking about as we drive this program forward? Please do introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Greetings from Slovenia, from our town, Trbovlje. I'm a mayor of the city Trbovlje, but I'm also a member of Committee of the Regions of European Union. So there are local representatives. And we a lot of times are debating how more than 70% of the European law that is accepted in European Parliament is then on the shoulders of local communities as well. This digital transformation, that's something that we have to know. And I would say that I'm coming from the city, which is a coal mining region, and that means that the European Union will, in the next years, start it with the program or mechanism which is called Just Transition Mechanism. To make sure that the Green Deal gets everyone's full support. So we are now already preparing the projects and what we will be doing, not only on the digital field, but also the whole economy. But what I'm trying to say is that, yes, at the end of the day, the mayors, the regions are the ones who has to put in life what is accepted in Brussels or in the law of European Union. And my opinion is that much more effort should be put into the pushing up the projects. That means that much more effort it should be up there at the European level, with much more support for the regions and the cities. Because you know what then at the end, the city can have their own, let's say, services and everything, but what will that mean to the people? If you have, I will say, like, imagine a project of a common digital card. So with one digital card, you can come to my city, for example, and you can go to the library with the same card. You can go and pay the bills that the community sends to you. You can go and take the electric car and everything. But that doesn't mean nothing to you if you can do with this card only in one city. So we need something. Okay.
Your internet's really bad. Yes. Unfortunately, your internet's really bad. And I hate having to cut you off, but we're finding it very difficult to hear you. But you're making some really interesting and important points. But Jasna, can I ask you to just perhaps put this on the chat? And so I encourage all of you, and I saw a lot of you are involved in the chat, and I saw the interesting idea from one of you saying, let's have Wi-Fi buses before we get infrastructure, which is a really canny idea. But just to ask you, what are you and other mayors in Europe doing to really push this agenda? And what can we do in partnership with you? So as a Connected Europe program, how can we make sure mayors are part of this journey? What can you help us do to bring a group of mayors together that are not waiting for signals from Brussels, because you might not get that signal for a long time, let's face it. But what can you do with self-agency and actually with push a bottom-up approach at municipal level to get a very different agenda on the cards. So we look forward to seeing what we can do with you and other mayors, and we'll hopefully look at you as an ambassador for this, Jasna, which I know putting you a bit of on the spot, but it'd be good to see what you can do to bring other mayors around on this agenda. I want to move on to let's say Patrick, I want to bring you in, and Daniel, I want to go back to the issue of government and what commissioners are doing. Patrick, thank you for joining us. You've been long in the tooth in the European Commission. That is not a comment on your age in any way. It's just that you're very experienced and you know your way around the business. Tell us from your perspective, Patrick, where are we? What's your sense because you've been involved in, all and many of these initiatives, but especially around R&D and investment in ways in which we need to build better infrastructure. Just from very briefly, what do you think is the sense of ambition or opportunity that we need to be conscious of? Who do we need to connect with, Patrick, inside the Commission to make sure? And it's not about going to commissioners, because you can do that, till the cows come home. That's not going to get you change on the ground. What's the infrastructure, locking points that we need to think about for this program to really move forward effectively? Patrick, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and I'm very happy to be here. So I'm Patrick Child, Deputy Director-General for Research and Innovation in the Commission. As you say, I've been in Brussels for a number of years and humbled by the youthful other participants that you have in this group. But no, I think that it's a powerful question. I think we've made, in fact, a huge amount of progress in the last year or so since the arrival of the von der Leyen Commission with, the European Green Deal and making Europe fit for the digital age as being the sort of overarching defining sort of objectives. With many of the topics that we've been hearing about, particularly on the importance of just transition, not leaving anyone behind, and making sure that the digital revolution in particular is something that benefits all of Europe's member states, all of our societies, all of our communities, and not just a few companies which have opportunities to build their business globally. And I think that since the beginning of the pandemic and the whole the shift in the debate on how are we indeed, as you said right at the beginning, going to spend this huge cash injection of public funds into the post-COVID recovery around the green and digital transition gives us a massive opportunity. And so through things like the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is part of the new generation EU recovery package that the Commission proposed, we have this very strong digital dimension around things like, of course, connectivity, research and innovation, but also human capital, skills and education, and making sure that everybody is able to take the most advantage of the transition. E-government and the way we build up digital infrastructures, and of course the business dimension as well, particularly the unconnected small and medium-sized companies that I think Ben mentioned. So I think we are, as we in the Commission are working on, for example, the revision of the industrial strategy. We talk about industrial strategy 5.0, where we shift, and this comes back also to what I think Ben was saying, shift from a sort of shareholder value sort of paradigm to one where we're much more talking about the broader stakeholders and connecting our industrial strategy with the sort of a more human dimension. We also have the Fit for 55, the series of measures that are going to be needed in order to enable Europe to deliver on the intermediate target of 55% reduction.
Okay. Patrick, I'm going to interrupt you. As you know, I have a tendency to do that. I'm sorry. And this is, all of that's great. What I want to hear from you, if I may, is say, where should we target our attention based on what you've just said, given what we're trying to do here? And, there is this interconnected sense of how do you build more success, more green, and greater resilience as a part of a connected Europe. If you were to say next year, Domendra's, this program should target all its effort on the industrial strategy, or is it on another area? What would it be? And I know it's a challenging question, but there's no right or wrong. But what would you, from your intelligence inside, what should we focus on? Where should we go?
I was conscious that I was answering your question in a somewhat indirect manner, but you know me, yeah?
Indeed, I love that. It's okay.
Yeah, okay. No, but look, I think, I don't think there is a single simple answer to your question. I think there are at least three levels where I would, from my perspective, think that that you should put your efforts. I mean, firstly, there is this debate on the Recovery and Resilience Facility. This sort of extra money, the 750 million for the post-COVID recovery, where member states are now being encouraged to draw up their recovery plans around a number of sort of key sort of ideas, flagship areas that we've suggested, including a very, very strong digital dimension. So encouraging member states to integrate the digital transformation in a sort of human-centric way in those plans, I think, is a first very important thing. Secondly, there is the whole debate on the taxonomy of sustainable finance, which linked to the whole question about green bonds and the Green Deal. And I think that making sure that you are connecting into that debate so that the digital dimension of the new criteria that are going to come out of the Commission on what are sustainable investments is a real sort of game-changing opportunity. And the third thing, I would of course mention, coming from my perspective, let's not just look at the here and now. Let's look at also the way we're investing in the future, and therefore in particular in research and innovation. Research and innovation are absolutely central to what we need to achieve in the digital and green revolution. And I like the point from the previous speaker also about cities. Yes. And we have a specific Horizon Europe mission on cities in preparation. And I think that's a good way also of reaching out very directly to local communities and getting some resonance there. Excellent. So those are my three levels.
Right. Patrick, thank you. As you know, we'll be chapping on your door, as you can imagine, for every bit of help and social and political capital you can provide to support this program. On that note, Daniel, thank you for joining us. You're an advisor in the cabinet of the delightful Frans Timmermans. Similarly, Daniel, and I don't want to hear about all the lovely things you're doing, which we know about. Frans is great about that, but he's also been frank in the conversation we've had about the challenges. You saw, I hope, the video. You've heard about what we're trying to do, and this is the language which a lot of people are using. What are the sweet spots that we need to or be hit upon if we were to move this program forward, really effective? So you're inside. You're advising the commissioner. From your perspective, in next year, what should we focus our attention on? What are the 2 or 3 things that you think, Connected Europe, as, we provide this huge opportunity to be outside, independent, critical friends, but with a major telecommunications, infrastructure body and a network of folk from Friends of Europe. Tell us, what do you think we should focus on? You're on mute. Either that or... Your microphone. Try that again. There you come. Yeah, lovely. Say something.
Sorry.
Perfect.
No. Yes.
Hello.
Really?
Well, I can hear you now,
okay.
Daniel.
That was a bit exciting. No. No. Thanks a lot. And sorry for being late. I was coming in a bit late, so I didn't see the video. But I'm excited about the project that you're presenting, because to also answer your question on what's your main takeaway from this, also working for a political boss who has something to say about this, is actually I think that society also can expect us to hardwire these expectations, both for being connected, but also for taking care of the climate and making sure that we take climate action. Those are demands that the youth are putting on us, and we, as a policymaker, need to hardwire that as much as we can. Both dimensions, both demands from the youth, be it in our rules, be it in our funds, be it in Next Generation EU, as Mr. Child also just said. And the reason why I was late is that I was working on a mobility strategy, which is coming out on Wednesday. And one immediately sees there how interconnected, as your project also shows, the green and digital demands are. I think that one thing that the pandemic has really taught us, for instance, in the field of mobility, is that the smarter you are, the more crisis-proof you are. I think that cities were very happy if they could rely on technology that could accurately predict when a metro was carrying too many passengers. And when then social distancing needed to take place. And when there was then an issue that the metro was overloaded, lots of cities who became more sustainable and built more bike lanes, for instance, were happy that they could still keep their citizens on the move at the same time. So that already shows that the pandemic made clear that if we want to recover in the right way, it is smart and sustainable, because that is also what is crisis proof. And you see that across the board, also precision farming, which is very important to cut our resource when our farmers are using their farmlands. We need to connect our rural areas, leave nobody behind there to make sure that these strategies go together.
Digital and mobility is a key issue. So that you're saying that, but as let me repeat again, this is a major program between Vodafone and Friends of Europe, and where we're saying we want to make a much more interconnected approach to success, resilience, and green transformation. In the next 12 months, use your political antenna and say, actually, this is the 2 or 3 things that you should really pay attention to if you're going to have some traction within the policy agenda within the EU. I know that's a tough question, Daniel.
No, like I think Mr. Child already mentioned one important aspect. I think that what he said about the smart city mission should not be underestimated, because that is a connected approach. That is about smart cities, both in terms of energy use, mobility, and what have you. All these things, that is important. And the other element, which I think is important in staying interconnected and connecting the dots, which is also what the Green Deal and digital transformation for us should be about, is to make sure that currently technology. And there's no shrivel of doubt in my mind. Technology is part of the solution to cut emissions, be energy efficient, and do something good for the climate. But at the same time, we must also be aware that we are going into a world where data will be eaten for lunch, breakfast, and dinner in ever increasing technologies. So that we have to make sure that it doesn't become a problem in the future, so that it stays a solution. That is also important, and there you need a approach that is also interconnected. If you see my home country, where some localities are now trying to, are now starting to oppose the emergence of some of these hyperscale data centers. Indeed. And data centers are a normal part of our connectivity. And we should accept it, because we can't consume on Netflix without them. But they're saying, but like we have the feeling that they're not part of the energy transition, that they will eat all our energy, and that they are not part of our surroundings. And that's why it's so important to tackle that question in a community way, to make sure that we work on the right incentives, the right funding, that the data centers, when there's excess heat, that is used to warm up the communities and the businesses next door, to make sure that we don't have too much electronic waste there, because then the data center can show, hey, I am part of your connectivity, but also part of your energy community, and I have your back on this. And I think that's important to work on both sides.
Daniel, thank you very much. I have to speed along, because I've only got 15 or so minutes left. I hope you can crave your indulgence to stay another extra 5 minutes or so. But Daniel, can I just ask you to do one? I mean, that's very helpful. I hope that you continue to partner and engage with us on this. But, if I can give you a soft KPI for next year, make sure Mr. Timmermans is fully aware of Connected Europe, that he falls in love with it, sees it as an opportunity from the outside in to do and achieve some of the things that we can. So we're counting on you, Daniel, in that respect, which is not lobbying. This is about making sure that we're seen as an independent opportunity to raise the right questions, but bring, our ambition is to have, both political influences, but citizen influences, regional and city level interoperability around this in an intellectual policy, but also practice manner in terms of how we get Connected Europe to thrive. So thank you very much for that. Philip, can I turn to you in terms of, we've heard a lot about transition and energy from Dorothée and others. What's your sense of what we need to be thinking about in terms of the energy transition in particular? Because it's going to be key as a part of the green recovery and transition. Philip, and do introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Dalmandra. And I'm actually working as a partner in Auxera Consulting. We advise a lot of telco companies and also high-tech companies on both sides of the debate, those who are defending their position and those who are against it. I just feel, first of all, having listened to this very, very, very exciting announcement of Connected Europe. I'm a trustee of the Friends of Europe, so I'm very interested in this being a great success. the first thing is to ensure that the whole effort of investment in infrastructure and in skills is supported at a public level, nationally, and at a European level. And also that the way money is spent really strictly in conformity with the kind of green conditionality which we want to see. And that includes whether it's European funds or whether it's state aids. There's got to be a high consciousness of what has already been mentioned as the most energy efficient solutions, the most carbon neutral solutions, which will ensure that investment is not wasted or not dissipated. All that is very important, as has been emphasized, for this transition, digital and green, to be inclusive and to reduce inequalities. I see that, secondly, beyond the Green Deal as itself as a framework for tackling both transitions, that we've got to be clear about what the problems are sometimes. I noticed in the questions for the debate, one of them was how can we rebalance the debate from portraying the digital sector as part of the problem to being a key driver of the solution? Well, the digital sector is already a key driver of the solutions. However, there are other problems which come alongside it which have to be tackled. One is, irrespective of those who are investing in infrastructure, there are large platforms which have significant market power. Telcos have had significant market power for many years, and they have been regulated to deal with it. But there is no significant regulation as such yet on the side of the large platforms, and we expect that to be tackled in the Commission's proposed Digital Market Act or Digital Services Act. That's regulation alongside the positive aspects which are being dealt with through investment in infrastructure and skills. But it's something which is absolutely necessary also for inclusion and equality. Because if the large frustrate the small, whether they're businesses or individuals, we will have less innovation. And secondly, as far as individual people are concerned, yes, we've got to take notice of the degree to which data can be used or exploited, which may not be for the benefit of all of us individually.
Yes.
And that's very important to deal with. So one shouldn't look at the issue of the attitudes to the digital sector as the digital being part of the problem of the green transformation. No, it is positively part of it, but at the same time, there is a problem of regulating the digital sector in the sense of large platforms, which will allow everyone to go forward knowing that there is not going to be an exploitation, that no one's going to be left out of this revolution.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to, I want to zoom through others. Mind the pun. I want to bring in Anne and Cristina very briefly, 60 seconds or more, and then I'm just putting André and Jakob on notice. I'll come to you thereafter. But Anne, share with us some of your perspectives on this, but very briefly, focus on the things that you think we ought to do.
What needs to happen? I think there are many things that need to happen. I think Vodafone will probably sit on a very large and very interesting data set, which could be extremely beneficial. I think as we're seeing that the gap is getting bigger and bigger, I'm curious about what data can build the bridge between people and get us back to connectivity, because by all means, what we really need is the wisdom of the crowd. And I'm especially interested, how do we empower the people who don't usually have a voice to have a voice and have a say, so that we together can bring integration and innovation forward?
Excellent. That was straight to the point. I love that. Thank you very much. That's not meant to be invidious to any of you, by the way. Cristina.
Well, thank you. Given the fact that I work in education, I'm particularly interested in the cultural digital divide, which I think it's a very important thing, because we not only need the infrastructure, but we need to understand how to use that infrastructure. So we don't just bring the internet and the connectivity to everyone. We really need companies to know how to use it for the best in order to also tackle the green, the sustainability opportunities. And we need students to really understand how to use devices, how to navigate into the internet. And also, we not only need them to understand how to use the digital tools, but also how to start thinking with system thinking. So I believe it's not only about the digital skills, but also giving everybody a broader perspective in order to really have a cultural shift. So what I think is that everybody who works in this sector should be active in this cultural change, helping bring in these things not only to schools, but also to all the citizens.
Okay.
There are so many very nice programs already around, but I think we really need more. So
okay.
I will
Cristina,
work on that.
Thank you. And sorry I didn't ask both of you to introduce yourselves, but please do so on the chat. But on the chat, what would be helpful is, Cristina, if any of you have got specific resources or examples that you think we should look at, and you say, actually, this is really good practice, or it's happening in this one particular place or across the piece, put it on the Zoom app so we can then start reaching out, and through your support. I want to, as I put your notice, André and Jakob. André, can I come to you?
Sure.
You're in this space. You have huge ideas and challenges about investment and what Europe does. Introduce yourself briefly, but tell us what you think we should do to make sure we move in the right direction.
Well, thanks, Tama, and good to see so many friends. So my name is André Loesekrug-Pietri, and I'm running JEDI, which we're building as a European initiative for disruptive technology. So basically the next step, how can we build the future we want and not the future that is imposed to us? Because we all know technology bears increasingly value. So look, I mean, you asked us to the question about first what to do with this great partnership, and how to use also smartly the tons of money that is going to come throughout Europe in the next months and years. Look, I mean, two quick points. One, let's not forget what is happening to us with this pandemic is just a magnifying glass. So we're just increasing what is happening. The digital divide, the fact that Europe in some aspects is probably also lagging behind. And we also see that the structures of democracies that we know are being tested. I'm not one of those who think that Europe did not react well. I think that actually Europe reacted as much as it could and with a lot more energy than it used to have in the past. So that's positive. But I think what you could do, and what I'm personally engaged with our relatively large organization now trying to do is this pandemic is basically a trial run for what's going to happen with the climate crisis. So we need to change our methodologies, because it's very clear to most of us that the structures, the methodologies, the organizations we have are not fit for this digital age. So that's what you could do. Point number one, currently in Europe, and I completely agree with Patrick, technology and innovation has a massive role to play, but probably increasingly we need to be focused. There needs to be an equality, diversity component of our policies to make sure that Europe goes as one and that there's not a divide between the rich and the poor countries and cities, etc. And innovation. Too many times, for those who know a little bit how it works, we are mixing coalitions, consortia approaches with these two things are two very important political goals, but they should be separated. Otherwise, we are a little bit average on the inclusiveness and also on the excellent. Second link, we should bring much more new voices to the place. We are just functioning with the incumbents. And I say with that with a lot of respect to Vodafone. I think the incumbents need to have their voice, but I can tell you from experience, so much more difficult for new players, foundations, civil society to be involved into the discussion at the
So
European
that's what you
level.
mean by new voices. You mean by new voices, you're talking about foundation, civil
It's
society
just
organizations. Who
that,
else is a new voice to you?
Look, new voices are non-governmental organizations, are probably citizen groups. I mean, not everybody has, the voices that probably a Greta Thunberg can have, but even her, I mean, she's trying to influence the system from the outside,
Sure.
and for the moment with not so many impact as we would wish. We need to see technology as a way indeed. What I'm worried is that today it's American constellations that are actually building the 6G, which might actually bring connectivity to the regions that are not well connected today in Europe. Are we doing something? On regulation, I agree somewhat with Philip, but let's face it, GDPR is today also a barrier of entry for the current platforms to avoid that newcomer. So we need to probably think regulation 2.0 and think about something that is not going to be self-inflicting. And last but not least, speed. I mean, look at Barnier's feedback this morning. Yes. We are just since 3 years just plagued with this Brexit topic, which is a disaster. But how much are we thinking in next generation Europe about really the next generation? And how much are we trying just to save the... We need to think very hard. Are we preparing the future? So that's what you could do. And let's try to push in this direction altogether.
Thank you. Thank you for being ambitious on our behalf. And I hope you'll be there leaning in to support this whole initiative. I've gone over time, but I do want to bring in those of you who are keen to. But I know that as a list of you that I really wanted to kind of engage in, I'm sorry that I've not got to all of you. But if I can crave your indulgence for another 5 minutes or so before you clock off, is that just to kind of bring in Jakob just briefly. Tell us, share some of your wisdom on this, but in a very brief way.
Yes, I will. Hi, I'm Jakob Hessler. I am German. I live in Paris. I'm an entrepreneur in technology and part of actually the European Institute of Technology advisory on investments in digital infrastructure. So I would like to focus on 3 very short points. There are 3 levels I think we're talking about. The first is the level of primary infrastructure. That's where we generate energy, we produce things, we do things, we drive, et cetera, et cetera. There, the key thing, what we need to focus on, and I think Philip mentioned it, is capital efficiency and the rules on how we govern capital investments, because at the moment they're not clear, and I think the Commission is preparing for this, but it's very important that investors have a long-term, clear understanding for that. The second level to me is sort of the level of the networks and of the computing infrastructure. That's where I think Vodafone comes in, but also all the others. I think there we need to accelerate the transformation in Europe and focus on the one hand, access, but also on make sure we get the next generation networks and technologies ahead of time, or we are at least part of those who are in the lead. And the third point is the meta system. It's the system we talked about governance. And there I would like to stress one particular point, and that is the question of algorithms and how algorithms need to be embedded in a society controlled or at least regulated way. So who controls the algorithms? And I think we need technology for it, but we also need accountability and transparency. And I think Connected Europe without this is not complete because it lacks the citizen aspect of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being brief and to the point. Can I just very briefly, Ilias and Victor, both of you, Victor, if I can bring you in, just a 60-second on the skills agenda. R&D is important, but do you have any comment on terms of what we need to do very specifically in regard to what we're trying to achieve with Connected Europe? Ilias, over to you. Please do introduce yourself briefly also.
Yes, hello. My name is Ilias. I work in DG Connect. I'm a colleague of Patrick. We're working on the ICT on the digital agenda. We, of course, introduce measures, and we care very much about the footprint of ICT to make sure that it is a minimal, so the positive impact is as big as possible. What I want to bring is just one comment. I would comment on many things, but I just wanted to say one thing that was not said. What Vodafone can do, or what telecommunication can do, is to help the transition to circular economy. I think what you really need to do is to help the SMEs and the large corporations, everybody in every sector, to transit to business models that do not rely as much on primary resources. switching to renewables is great. This is your primary kind of energy consumption, but you need to go to material efficiency. Otherwise, we'll never reach sustainability. And these business models are those that will be not a quantity-driven business model, but services that address user needs. And that is the biggest challenge for climate change. So if you really want to do something for climate change, help as connectivity with infrastructure and data to change the business models so we can actually arrive to circularity and therefore to sustainability.
Ilias, thank you very much for that very to the point. I'm glad I brought you on. Victor, anything you would like to contribute in terms of skills agenda in from where you're coming? Please do introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm vice chair of the Culture Committee, Culture and Education Committee in the European Parliament. I'm focusing on digital education. I'm the rapporteur of the European Parliament on this important file. So yeah, first of all, we have to make sure that the 20% allocated for digital skills across Europe in all the national recovery plans are actually implemented. And I looked at the national recovery plans proposed by member states, and we don't see that yet. So we have a severe problem in this regard. Secondly, we have to give ownership on the ground to stakeholders at the local and national level, and of course create broad European coalitions like the one that you have built right now and that you are pushing forward, because we need to make sure that people are part and feel part of this digital and green transformation that currently is happening. And we shouldn't push green against digital. Green and digital are going together, and we have to make sure that this is happening also across Europe. Thirdly, and not least, we have to make sure that, of course, this is an inclusive process that everyone can be part of. And we have to make sure that European funding is allocated adequately. We have to make sure that the private stakeholders are part of the process. We have to make sure that the civil society is part of the process. But also, we should not forget about education. In order to build stronger support for everything that everyone is saying, we have to make sure that people are informed, that they are skilled, that they are educated, that they can feel powerful in this transformation process that is happening. Because if they don't feel that this is coming from them, they will oppose it. So I'm sure that this is one of the directions to go, and what you are doing is a great initiative. And I'm
Victor, we'll be counting. Thank you, Victor. We'll count on you to be one of our ambassadors, to be able to pull together a group of MEPs that can really, I suppose, power the elbow of this initiative, but also say some uncomfortable things that we need to be thinking about also. And so use us, our program, as an opportunity to perhaps fast track some issues that you may not be able to achieve from the inside, if you like, but to think about this as a collaboration. And as Ben has said before, a different kind of social contract. I want to very briefly, thank you very much, briefly, Charles-Pierre, you're sitting in an interesting position. Before I'm going to close with the two women who've put their hands up, is tell us, what's your thought? You're sitting, introduce yourself, obviously, people here. From where you're sitting in France and what your role is, what advice can you give us in terms of what we should focus on?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm the General Secretary of the French Digital Council. So it's an independent body, but it's also a public one. And we advise the government on the on the digital matters. We've worked on the environmental impact of the digital transformation. And I think that some key things that we should focus on are data as common good, and that's definitely a big one. That's one that we talked about a bit earlier in the discussion, regulation of algorithms, and also education. We've started with that actually, but that's definitely a big one. Yeah, these are the three main key points that I would see for in order to go forward with our agenda of connectivity.
And is that what is the ear open to what you're saying in France? Is that the kind of, are you getting traction on this from Mr. Macron and others in terms of the digital agenda?
I think that on the data side, things are moving quite behind the scenes, but it's definitely going forward. In terms of education, there's a new course in high school in France that started, I think, last year or maybe 2 years ago, that is specifically dedicated to digital matters. So, and there's a part in the environment in that. So it's definitely moving forward.
Okay. All right, thank you. And I wouldn't expect you to say any more than that, given the role you're playing, but also there's politics at hand. But that's how it is. Very briefly, and I do apologise. Dionysia, you wanted to say something, and Anne, I believe, bring you back in.
Yes, thank you very much. Very briefly, I would like to congratulate you on this exciting event and also propose that we continue on the conversation with the Friends of Europe on this digital and green smart infrastructure. And I would like to invite the participants today to participate to a major project that Greece is going to start in the coming months with the Just Transition Fund, because Greece is going to phase out lignite by 2028. So we have picked two regions in Greece that we're going to give a lot of money for digital innovation. So if anybody is interested, you're very welcome to be hosted in Greece. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Congratulations
much.
again.
Thank you very much for that. And we will be counting on you with other parliamentarians, obviously, in pulling this forward. Anne, did you want to come in?
Yes, I wanted to just basically put forward two wishes that would really help us at ReDI School. And one of them is we're working very closely with the tech industry, and what they really benefit from is when their employees are actually getting engaged with NGOs, so in our case as mentors. And if the tech industry could actually go out and really work with the technically marginalized people, I think that would be an eye-opening experience for everyone, and also really drive innovation through some real insights. So that's the number one. Number two, we are working with Vodafone in Germany to provide internet to refugees living inside of refugee camps. This has not been easy. It's basically driven forward by internal people who have made this possible. What I would love to see from Vodafone is that they would commit to, say, 1 million users where NGOs can apply for free Wi-Fi sticks for the people that we're working with, and making this really smooth on the inside, because then we can reach much more people. Thank you.
And thank you. I know some of you want to come in, but I think there isn't a better point than that to end this conversation. It was, it's inspiring and shows the art of the possible and what the potential can be. Obviously, this is the start of the conversation, people, and I'm so sorry if I have not brought you in. This is, as I said, this is the start of the conversation. This was intending to bring a small group of you. Remember Margaret Mead said very famously, it only takes a small group of people to achieve massive change, and you are our small group of people to help us on this journey for a connected Europe. And I'm sorry, I'm not even going to bring Vodafone back because I'm so out of time. But thank you very much. We're counting on you, and I mean that in a genuine way. This is not like some sick affair. This is a lot of hard work, and we want this to be a success. It's the first time we're embarking on such an ambitious project with such a large, telecoms infrastructure body, and we want to make sure that some of our credentials as a think tank, which is to bring, out-of-the-box thinkers, to bring unheard voices, to bring that locality perspective, but entrepreneurs and a whole mix of different perspectives, to think about the brain as being across the whole of Europe and within communities. And this is the approach we're hoping to take. So we look forward to working with you. Thank you so much for this rich conversation. And we'll give you more information in terms of how we intend to work with you and set those kind of structures for your participation. And if you have any other good ideas, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And thank you very much. Be safe, mind your distance, and take care and have a lovely week. Those of you who are interested in Balkans, the West Balkans, I'll be moderating our opening session of our summit on West Balkans, which we've got the President of North Macedonia and a whole raft of others from 2 o'clock onwards. So if you're interested in that, switch on. Otherwise, thank you all very much. Take care. Lovely to see you all. Bye-bye.